So in 2017, we started talking about sort of realistically, would it make sense for us to be acquired by some larger company?
We'd been approached a few times about being acquired, and it never seemed like it was the right fit or the right time, or things just didn't feel right to us.
Some people start businesses to make a lot of money. I kind of brought this before, and their ultimate end game is to like sell their company or whatnot, or just make a ton of money and then go public or whatever. That's never been like something that has ultimately interested me. I wanted to make video games and try to have as much of my own flexibility to do it as possible. And obviously having your own company is risky, of course, but it does give you the flexibility sometimes to do the things that you want to do.
I remembered there had been some rumors and whispers around the studio that I think some people were maybe talking to Microsoft, and I think I was very much just going about my business.
And we were going around and kind of showing studios and publishers Avowed. Said, so, hey, we're interested in this game, but are you guys interested in being acquired?
Microsoft was the publisher for Stormlands, which they had terminated in 2012, which was like horrific for the studio and caused all kinds of trauma, including a huge layoff. And so the idea that we would go back and work for Microsoft again seemed a little sort of counterintuitive, like maybe a little silly to put our eggs back in that basket.
I think when we got acquired, I think for any business owner, when they get acquired, they're sort of you think differently about it initially than everybody else. For me and for my partners, for us it was we didn't have to worry about payroll anymore. And I bring that up because I think it's a thing that being a business owner, it's a thing. It's always there, and it's always there of like, is there enough money in the bank account that I get to pay everybody? We're going to pay everybody in the middle of the month.
It was over that 17 years was just a lot of the money is coming in, the money is not coming in, the money stopped coming in. And there were a couple times, honestly, where I had to rush to the bank myself and withdraw a bunch of money to make sure payroll happened, right? Just to make sure that we could cover payroll while we were waiting for some payments to come in.
And it seems like in talking to Microsoft and talking to the people who were talking to Microsoft, this was just going to give us more stability to do the kinds of things we like to do and make the games we enjoy making, rather than being a reconfiguration of the studio.
So in terms of looking at like how we can plan, how we can look ahead, how we can think about, strategically growing the studio, more importantly, growing like our IPs and our games, I think that like Microsoft makes that just a lot more doable.
Over the years, that I've been in this industry, I've seen a lot of companies get acquired and then just disappear. They just get absorbed into, the publisher and no longer exist, or they just get shut down, or, and just the IP exists or something. And I didn't feel like that would happen with Microsoft. I felt like, Microsoft was still interested in letting us be us. If we went with Microsoft, we could still be Obsidian.
Microsoft was very upfront about that. They go, we want you to keep on doing what we do, in part because we want your culture to stay the same, which is what I want. And I think what everybody else wants here is they want to be Obsidian. They don't want to just be Microsoft Irvine.
Outer Worlds is a retro future game that takes place in a society where corporations have colonized the galaxy, and kind of as a parody of late stage capitalism.
Welcome to the edge of the galaxy, the frontier of space. Well, at least it was until the corporations bought it, branded it, and started selling it at ludicrously inflated prices.
I had put together my own ideas for what I thought a space role-playing pitch might be, and I can tell you that they wrote something that was way cooler than what I wanted to do. I wanted to do like a Han Solo space smuggling RPG, which I still think sounds cool. And I think it's like 10 times less cool than what the Outer Worlds turned into. And I worked a lot with them at the beginning of that project. I actually did all of the production work with just those guys. It was me and Tim and Leonard working on that project for about 6 months. And then Armored Warfare got terminated. And so we were able to finally start staffing up the project with people that were then coming off of Armored Warfare. And that is where the team actually started to get all of its people and start growing up and and really start developing what would become the Outer Worlds.
I remember Tim and Leonard stepping out on stage and showing the trailer, and Buddha Jones does such amazing trailers that you could see how charming and funny it was and how well it nailed the spirit of the IP. And so it was great to see something that we'd all been so excited about internally finally in front of our audience.
It was like almost a blending of our personalities. I'd kind of pull it from getting too silly, and he'd kind of pull it from getting too dark. We could agree on where we landed. It wasn't something where like, oh, I felt it should have been darker, or he felt it should have been a lot sillier. I think we both had the same goal in mind. It's just left to our own devices. I think he would have skewed a little bit sillier and more straight comedy, and I would have veered a little bit more into the dark underside of humanity.
It was just great to see that people loved the Outer Worlds from the get-go. That made me proud, and I think it makes the team proud.
The announcement was very strong. The reception was very strong. And I realize it's, I don't know, maybe kind of a rare blessing to get to be on a project that is well received like that from announcement to release. And especially having come off of Pillars and Deadfire, which were also quite well received.
I think the coolest thing that I got to do for the Outer Worlds was when we did the launch event at the Microsoft Store. We got to do a big live stream there on launch day. We brought on Major Nelson, who came through. We brought on a bunch of the different devs throughout the course of the day. And it was really just an awesome time to bond with the team over such a special moment.
So I know that the team had already been working on the DLC for probably about 9 or 10 months before anyone talked to me about directing. So yeah, I remember it was I think like Matt Perez and Kate Dollarhide and Matt Hansen and Alec Fry and I kind of got together, and we had to very quickly work together to come up with a pitch for, okay, we're, kind of revising the direction of this DLC. What do we think we can do? I felt like we had a really strong identity with sort of this noir take on the Outer Worlds that sort of lived in a similar genre space as the base game, but gave us a little bit of room to play with it and kind of push the flavor and the tone just a little bit so that players hopefully felt like they were getting something a little bit new. It was a really neat thing to be a part of, and I was definitely very proud of how it came together.
Obsidian is a mid-sized developer, but we've always worked on a lot of projects at the same time. We're always doing so many things at the same time, and all of us tend to kind of contribute in our own way to so much of what's going on.
How many teams show up to E3 with 3 awesome games? Like that's a way to come out the gate. The feeling that I had going into that show was an immense sense of pride. As a new Xbox game studio, it just was really cool to show up in a meaningful way. And better yet, show up with 3 awesome assets.
In Paragon Gorgon, which was one of the DLC for Outer Worlds, the early access launch trailer for Grounded, and then actually sort of a very early CG trailer for Avowed. And it was pretty interesting, though, of like going into that big showcase and our little studio of this giant Xbox organization actually has 3 things in it.
We took quite a swing with the Grounded joke that we wanted to make, and another one that kind of we had to push uphill with kind of calling out Cyberpunk.
If you're waiting for the biggest game of the year, then wait for Cyberpunk. But if you're ready for the smallest, we've got you covered.
It worked. It paid off. It was like a risk, and it had a pretty awesome reward. And then got to kind of set everyone ablaze with the announcement of Avowed.
At the end of the day, we love making awesome games and having people play them. I like when we show up big to those conferences and we have multiple things. And if I could come to every game conference with 5 games, I would.
While we're working on Pillars of Eternity, even way back in 2012, survival games weren't really a thing, and they started becoming a thing. Survival was something that at the studio we were very interested in and passionate about, just as players. It had a lot of the RPG DNA where you could kind of play the character that you wanted to play in those games, and explore a cool world. And so that was something that I thought there was a good opportunity there for us to try out our own survival game. At the end of Deadfire, we had the opportunity to start a new team to work on it, and Fergus gave me the opportunity to put together a team and figure out a pitch, and that eventually turned out to be Grounded.
Right out of the gate, I was honestly kind of scratching my head about it. Like, really, we're gonna make something that's kind of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but it's a survival game with role-playing elements? Like, okay, I'm not sure I can actually like bring all of those things together in my mind properly. But by the time I saw the first like running demo of it, I was like, oh, okay, I get this now. This is going to be amazing. And by the time it got around to announcing the product, I was sure that we had something that was going to be super special, that people were going to totally dig, that took survival in a different direction, but not just for the sake of being different, but because it was just super cool.
I think there was a lot of worry about announcing Grounded as one of our first Microsoft games because it was so different than what we had done before.
I was terrified. I was very terrified. And even worse, like all of those terrifying moments kind of came true because we got review bombed immediately the moment that the game trailer was announced. But it was also an awesome moment because we went to XO, which was the Xbox dedicated event for just Xbox games. Watching people actually play the game and demo the game in person made it all worthwhile. Like, people were having such a great time.
The early access model was something that I knew that I wanted to do from day one. We wanted to get the game into players' hands as soon as we possibly could when we felt good about it. And we wanted to iterate and build that community and build those features with the community, because as a game developer, that's the most powerful thing, is iteration and seeing how people play and iterating on those ideas to make something a lot better.
I knew once we started picking up momentum for Grounded that it was gonna hit.
It hit like 1 million people in the first 40 hours. It's crazy to think. I mean, we knew it was a good game, but the fact that we were able to get to that many people so quickly was super cool to see.
I've never expected Grounded to be as popular and, as well received as it has been. I always thought, if we break even on the project, everything's good.
And then to actually have it come out, have the reviews be great and continue to grow users, I think is phenomenal. It's super exciting.
Was I nervous at first? Yeah, because it was a new type of game that we haven't done before. But ultimately, they knocked it out of the park. They killed it.
It's blown everyone's expectations out of the water, and the community's amazing. Everyone at Obsidian that's worked on the game has done a fantastic job.
It's not just the number of people, it's like the quality of the community. Like, it's one of the most positive communities that there is out there for a video game. And that's rare, right? That doesn't happen often in video games.
It's one of those things that I've said repeatedly is, as long as they're going to let me work on Grounded, there's going to be Grounded stuff going on. And there's going to be a lot of new and exciting things for the future.
If there was a showcase that I was a little worried about going into and showing our products, was the one in 2022. I wasn't worried about what we're showing. I just was worried more about people wanting to see our big RPGs, seeing what was going on with Avowed, seeing what's going on with Outer Worlds 2. And what we had for them was the trailer for Pentiment that was showing people the game for the first time.
It's always scary announcing something new because you don't know how people are going to react. You think you made something great and they will react very poorly. But if you're honest, then you will know how people react. And I think that's the thing that I was more assured of with announcing Pentiment and with Josh, is like, there's so much truth and upfront honesty in what that game is that it knows what it is. And then so people who are excited about that can be excited, and people who are less excited about that can at least appreciate the passion in the craft.
I knew that there were some people where they would see it and they would immediately say, I'm really into this. I love history. I love sort of historical art. This is really fascinating to me. People who are just really into narrative adventure games. And then there was a very large group of people, more sort of, let's say, core gamers, who just were very confused. They're like, what is this? I don't know if this is a game or if this is something else. But that was fine. I sort of knew that was going to be the reaction. And then there were some people that thought it looked really cool, but also didn't really understand what it was. And so it wasn't until later that we were able to really go in more in depth and explain, like, this is really what you're doing moment to moment in the game. So if you go back through my career, I didn't really have much choice in what I worked on. I mean, Well, a little bit, but a lot of it was, this is the game that the studio is making. Do you want to be on it? And then I had flexibility within that. And don't get me wrong, like I love D&D, I love Fallout, like I love role-playing games, but there weren't many places where I truly got to say, no, I just want to make this thing. I want to make this thing for some audience that is out there, and I want to do it the way that I want to do it. When I got into the game industry, I thought back to a lot of the formative games from my childhood and going into middle school and high school. And one of the most memorable ones was a game called Darklands that came out in 1992. It really focused on the 15th century in the Holy Roman Empire. And even though it did have some fantastic elements to it, it was really fundamentally a historical game. And when I got in the industry in 1999, I wanted to make a Dungeons and Dragons game, a Fallout game, and a historical game. And I got to make a D&D game right away. And then it took a little while to make the Fallout game, but the historical game was the one that eluded me for the longest time.
So I don't think there was much pushback or questioning of like, hey, is this okay for you to do? Or is this not okay for you to do? There was a very clear pitch and there was a very clean scope, right? There's a lot of fear, hesitation that, oh, why is Josh Sawyer going and working on, this weird 2D narrative game? Well, this is why. It's because they're making stuff that's really special and that people really love and people want to play and have a different impact on the industry.
I was super excited to see how well Pentiment did. I obviously loved seeing it review highly. But honestly, what was even more gratifying was seeing that on Steam that we had something like 98% positive user reviews. And so that the people who were buying the game were really enjoying it.
My expectation was that the split was going to be like 30-70. Like 30% were going to be very positive and 70% were going to be pretty neutral to negative. So when I saw that the majority of the reviews coming in were very positive, that was really great. Because again, I always knew that the game was niche. I knew that there was a strong chance that when it hit a wider audience, even including reviewers, that the response was not going to be that great. And people were going to say like, either I don't get it, or I don't like this type of game, or you did a bad job. So, which is always a possibility. So it was really nice to see the majority of people really give us a lot of praise for it.
Seeing the reception like validates that, and it keeps us like confident that the choices we're making as a studio are the right ones.
Pentiment really was like, do the thing you want to do, like really actually what you want to do. I got to determine that. So of course, if I have the ability to do that again, I would like to do it.
When I look back at 20 years, there's decisions of mine that I feel really good about, and there's decisions that I feel not so good about. One of the things where I really pushed was that Avowed was going to be multiplayer. And I kept on that for a long time. And I think in the end that was I know in the end it was the wrong decision to keep on pushing on it. Now why I had done it was when we were still independent and we were selling it. It was a more interesting game to publishers. And when you're asking for 50, 60, 70, 80 million, you got to have something interesting to talk about. And multiplayer made it interesting. It was sort of this idea of it's almost like, it's the peanut butter and chocolate and putting it together and like, wow, it must be something that's good.
We were too focused on co-op and we were too focused on changing the way our pipelines work and the way that we write conversations and the way we do quests and everything else. After working on it for a little bit, we realized that we weren't focused on the things that we're best at. And so we did we made a pivot on the game basically to refocus really and make sure that it was at the end of the day an Obsidian game and not something different.
The thing that was both exciting and intimidating about stepping into this role on Avowed is it's an IP that I know, but it's a different style of game for us. And so figuring out how much exactly we want to take from Pillars 1 and Deadfire, and then how we make this game more approachable to a larger audience that maybe didn't play the Infinity Engine games and maybe didn't play either of the original Pillars games at all. Like, how do we stay true to that IP, but how do we create an experience that's more approachable for a larger audience? It's a challenge. And you also don't have so much of that common language that you share with the rest of your team, having either worked on the base game together or at least having seen that base game come together fairly recently. You're building new stuff. And so there are some reference points you can obviously look to, but there is so much more that you have to define. One of the big challenges when we started that pivot was we were defining that direction and building a vertical slice and then preparing for production all in about 8 months. It was very hectic.
It's something different, and it's something that's very unique and something I think people will really love to play, but it's not going to fit kind of the exact mold of what I've seen the trend being was expected for Avowed.
Part of the challenge is, building something that delights your fans, but knowing that you're not going to meet everybody's specific expectations. And if you tried to, you'd have the roast chicken and M&M pizza.
Avowed is our version of what a first-person fantasy game is. We focus on a lot of unique and bespoke content. We focus on deep systems. We focus on incredible storytelling that's focused on characters and societies and factions. I think Avowed is the natural extension of all the things that we care about as a studio and all the things that we're great about as a studio. I think there's going to be a lot of people who love this game.
Looking at the last 20 years, a studio can go through lots of changes, and who are you today is maybe different than who you were yesterday and who you will be in a few years. I think for Obsidian, we've stayed pretty consistent.
I don't want us to become something different. What I want to do is to make the same kind of really interesting and complicated and nuanced RPGs that we've made before, just with a little bit more time at the end to fix some bugs. If I can do that for the next 70 years, I'm going to do it.
Obsidian drew me here because it was a special place that was really, community led, both internally and externally. I don't want to lose that with growth. I think that's what makes Obsidian special. What allows kind of that the character of the people to come through in the games that they make is that they're kind of like you see them in the games because we're not these huge 7,000 person teams. Really, every individual is a game maker. These franchises that maybe no one expected before, like Grounded or even Pillars, and we're taking them to the next level and we're having them reach more people and we're building out cool other stuff like TV shows and stuff like that to allow people to play in our worlds beyond just the games themselves. And so I think that is what I hope is we keep building upon the great foundation that Obsidian already has.
Of course, I've learned a ton about making games as Josh, as Adam, as Chris and Darren and everybody else at the studio. But still, we don't know everything. And I think if there's what I hope, and I think what has held our culture is a whole group of people who realize they don't know everything. And that if our job is that's our primary job is to go make an awesome game for someone, we have to know everything we can. And if we don't know it, then we have to ask and we need to listen. And by doing that, that's where the honesty comes from. That's where the pragmatism comes from. And that I think has made our culture feel the same and be the same from day one to today.
There's components of what make an Obsidian game that will always be present. Interesting characters, an interesting world will always be present. But I think the other thing that we focus on as a studio that makes our games interesting and fun is that they're unique. And to drive uniqueness, they're going to have to be a little bit different. But there's DNA that's built into the creators here that will always be Obsidian focused. But trying to do it in a unique way will naturally drive us towards kind of making cool games and cool twists on what it means to be an RPG.
We make games for the fans of those games, and we like to put ourselves in their shoes, and knowing that there are people who are going to be really excited to play Pentiment, and people are going to be really excited to play Avowed, and people who are really excited to play Grounded. Seeing those people get excited for those games gets us excited because we want to make sure they have a great time, and knowing that there's people out there who are looking forward to your game, it makes you feel good. It energizes the development and energizes the studio. Everyone loves to see that stuff.
If I can say anything about getting to 20 years is that it's incredibly impressive and it doesn't mean shit at the same time. And that's the thing to take away from it. We've done a lot of great stuff, but we can't assume we're just gonna make a bunch of great stuff. We still gotta work at it. And I know we can do it, but that's the job. The job is to look back at what we did and be proud of it, but not have it be something where we just sit on our throne of amazing RPGs and go, oh, they're just gonna be awesome in the future. We gotta work at it, and that's how we're gonna be proud of it. If we work at it, they'll be awesome, and we'd be proud of it, and we'll have a whole new generation of people who will enjoy our games.
My name is Adam Brennicky, or I'll do that again. I'll try not to smile so much. I hate being on camera. Okay. My name is Adam Brennicky. I've been at Obsidian since 2004.
Your title?
My title is... Let me do that. I'll do it all in one so you don't have to... Okay, this is the easy stuff and I'm having trouble. Okay. Hi, my name's Adam Brennicky. I've been at Obsidian since 2004 and I'm a game director here at the studio.
What is a dream game you'd like to work on and why is it the wrestling RPG?
Ah! So I think what is really just too bad about Obsidian and actually the history of games in general is the fact that Mikey Dowling didn't get to work at Black Isle Studios, in which if he had been there, he would have had his one opportunity to create an entire wrestling mini game within Fallout 2. But unfortunately, because he wasn't part of a Black Isle, it never happened. And I just think reality is it never will.
My name's Justin Birch, and I am the head of development. I started in March of 2013.
So, at your start of in March 2013, what were you doing initially here at Obsidian?
Sorry, I blanked out because I was thinking about, like, I'm Justin. And that made me giggle. I'm gonna redo that for my own sake, because otherwise I'll think about it the entire time. Could you please ask that question again?
Can you please state your name, title, and year you started working at Obsidian?
My name is Marcus Morgan. I am the head of strategy and operations, and I started working at Obsidian in 2021. Thanks, Mikey. Should I restate that to get it right, or no? We're gonna power through that and let's just move on. Okay, good.
Okay. Testing. 1, 2. I won't do the Beavis and Butthead version. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Sounds good.
3. Except it's not testing.
Yeah, I know.
And started working the next week.
That's
You're getting
awesome.
some rubbing on your shirt again.
What do you want me to do?
Maybe, I don't know, Mikey, what do you think? Seems like it's just in a spot. Layer it out, like, even if you wouldn't, like, I don't know. I wish it looked like you wouldn't look.
I can do less
Okay.
less movements.
Yeah, or, I mean, you can be super stylish and do one less button.
What do you think that would help?
Yeah, because then...
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Try that.
Now you're modern.
Okay. Throughout the interview, I'm going to take more and more buttons off. And then at the end, I'll have my shirt off. It'll be great.
Like, wow, 19 really changed.
Yes.
You get to pick a project.
I would love to do another spy RPG or survival horror, Alien Isolation 2. The only problem is I can't play it. I'll have to watch people play it.
How do you direct a game to be able to
I don't know. Maybe I just have to get braver.